Kicking it with Kay and Clay. 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 Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening and watching Kicking It with Kay and Clay. I am Kay, and we have something of a very important show today. We're going to be talking about coping and dealing with our emotions and our mental health state because of everything that's going on and that has been going on for a while, especially for us African Americans. So today on the show, I have a clinical supervisor who is going to share with us and help us with some healthy, coping mechanisms and just give us a little understanding on maybe why, we're feeling the way we feel and how to successfully deal with these emotions that we're feeling. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest today, Deidre Thompson. Hi, Dee.
Hey, how are you?
Good, and you?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you accepting.
Yes. It's an important conversation to have. There's just so much going on.
It is.
That it's an important conversation to have. I'm sure we're all having it in some informal way and expressing it in some informal way, but I look forward to the dialogue today about it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And I know that a lot of us, when I say us, us African Americans or Blacks or however, you want to call yourselves, it's a stigma in our community, as far as talking to someone professionally. And, we can't afford to have this stigma, and we can't afford to not talk to someone, especially when this is happening to us. So what do you think that causes, this your opinion, what causes this stigma? I mean, I have some of my opinions, but
absolutely. In terms of the stigma, and the stigma really is across humanity, but it particularly, it shows up in the African American community. A lot of times mental health needs are viewed as a sign of weakness in some way. And that as a male or as a female, that you somehow failed to manage life and you failed to live up to this ideology that we're superheroes. And we're not. We're human. We are human beings wrapped in beautiful brown flesh, but we're human beings. And we have all needs. We have a need to eat, we have a need to sleep, and we have a need to be well in our emotions. And so a lot of things that we face in this particular community make it sometimes a little difficult to maintain the health that helps us to sustain and thrive. Because it's not always about sustaining, it's really about thriving. And, sometimes that stigma kind of slows us down from getting what we need to get to a place of thriving or back to a place of thriving.
Because I know, like in our community, African American community, a lot of us were told, just pray about it. And backgrounds. So, and we're being Christians, of course, we're going to pray about it. But it also, he placed counselors, therapists, psychiatrists, he placed them, here for us as well. So that's another tool. Go ahead.
That just reminds you're right that prayer is an essential part of maintaining health. Prayer is not a one-way dump off. It's like, oh, this is everything that's going on, Lord, here, and then walk off.
Yeah.
It is a dialogue. And part of that is hearing and being led about, now, what do I do about this thing that's stressing me?
Yeah.
If it's something I'm supposed to do, what is it? And there are all kinds of things that you're supposed to do. There's a wide open spectrum of interventions that can help. And we can't close that down and be a hindrance to our own health by saying, well, I don't need help. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm good. It's just not the truth. It's not the truth. And you mentioned about God giving us people that are trained in various fields. And I remember as a kid, as a kid, people used to ask you, well, what you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And I specifically remember as a kid, I would say, I'm going to be a doctor and a lawyer. I had no interest.
You just heard it.
I had no one of those, but I heard it and I was like, oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Zero. But I specifically remember as a kid sitting on a sit and spin watching TV. So I was real little. And I know it to be the peace of God now. But at the time, I remember thinking about, well, what am I going to be when I grow up?
Mm-hmm.
And it downloaded that I was supposed to be in the helping profession. Now, in my mind, it was a psychiatrist.
Okay.
But I didn't know the spectrum of professions that were designed to help people emotionally. And once I learned the spectrum, I found my zone. And so undoubtedly, I'm here for a reason. I'm in this field for a reason. And part of that is to help people feel normal about needing somebody to talk to. Sometimes we just do.
We do, So what can you let everyone know what exactly, like, what's your day-to-day look like? Like, what exactly that you do?
Yes. So, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I've been a social worker for 20 years. And it don't seem that long because I still remember undergrad like it was yesterday.
Oh, wow.
But time flies. Both my degrees are in social work. So I have a bachelor's and master's in social work and now licensed. And so I've worked with children and families over the years. I've worked with adults with serious mental illness that were in residential group home settings, in homes, but needed ongoing specialized support and intervention. I've worked with a Medicare population and currently have opportunity to serve our military families that have some very specific needs around autism and things like that. So, so it's been a spectrum of opportunities to intervene. I worked with teenagers for a long time, and I love them. And I wish them well, but they're a tough population. They're a tough population. But I did thoroughly enjoy all the work that I had an opportunity to do with them and their families.
That's good. That's a good thing, and it is a calling too to be able to want to help people.
Yeah.
Really.
I know some people are called to the medical field. I absolutely never could. I could never do it. So hats off to all the people that go into delve into our physical health in such a way that for those that are not called, it's a very squeamish.
And and you mentioned physical health. Excuse me. We know that physical health is important.
Absolutely.
But mental health is just as important as physical health. And in the wake of with everything that's going on, like I spoke with you before we started, I was saying that I had to take a mental health day. I had to take a day off. I was watching, it was last week. I was watching all the footage and CNN, and I had to. I told my boss, she understands because she's a Black woman, and I was like, look, I can't. I have to take this time off.
Yeah, and it's important because we do have a strength, and we're not the only ones, but we do have a strength. that has been forged in centuries of having to live amongst trauma.
Mm.
Trauma to us, trauma to our communities, trauma to our family. I mean, just trauma and restriction, the inability to live the fullness of your life without hindrance. We've had to do it for centuries.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there is a strength that's present. It doesn't mean that we're superheroes and
Right.
don't need that place of comfort. For a lot of people, it is and was the church. That's your place to just release and be free, and your faith, because it's you and God.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to take that time and say, hold on, let me regroup. So there's a strength that's present with us that allows us to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
That internally informs us to keep moving. I just got to do this. And if you add to that parents who, they can't stop for the kids.
Right. They can't take a day off.
They can't take a day off, or the kids' demands, they don't stop. They still want to eat. They still want
right.
They still need to be bathed. They still need to be bathed. They still need.
Life still goes on.
It still goes on. And so there's this kind of like, all right, I'll deal with it later.
Mm.
And sometimes we have to make later now.
Yeah, we do.
Sometimes we just
because when you don't make later now, what are some of the ramifications of that? Like, what are some of the symptoms of that?
Well, it shows up in a lot of different ways. I started that by saying, while we have the capacity to move forward, there's a book that's called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's about trauma and how it's stored in our mind, our will, and our physical bodies. And I'll tell you this story. So a couple weeks ago, I had to go into the doctor's office for a follow-up appointment. And, first of all, our state had just started to really open up again. So I was all extra happy to just see people face to face, because I've been locked in the house for most of the time.
Right.
So I've got my mask on, my gloves, and I'm going through all the, the temperature reading, and they stop you 2-3 times to make sure wristband on to make sure. I mean, it's serious. It's serious.
Right.
But I was feeling really happy because I was out and I was seeing people. So I get in the room and I'm just in a conversation with the nurse. They do their triage questions and all that other stuff. And so I'm talking to her, and we started talking about COVID-19. And, Detroit got hit hard.
Yeah, we did.
It got hit hard. And I have family that was impacted by it, friends that were impacted by it. And we were just talking. And then she took my blood pressure. And I still wasn't feeling stressed, but my blood pressure was like 171 over something. It was super high. And we both noted, like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
That's not normal. So we went on, for the reason for the appointment. I got the information I needed. She wanted to check my blood pressure again, and it was normal.
Yeah.
So even though I wasn't necessarily thinking I was stressed, my body was stressed. And so the things that start to show up are going to be in your body long before you mentally start to wear down.
That's true.
And so the habits of healthiness, emotional healthiness, are practiced every day before you feel like you need them. So it's said that by the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated.
Right. Yeah.
So by the time you're like, man, I need to just chill out, you already there. You're already really beyond that point. That's your cue but your body has already started to store this trauma within itself. You know, a lot of us we've been locked up in these houses for a long
Girl.
time. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
And I understand why. I'm a proponent of safety measures.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. Still, it's been a long time. And so, just that has led to a break in routines that helped us sustain a sense of health.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to work from home. And so that routine wasn't a disruption for me. But for others, going from being able to switch environments to leave your house and go to the work environment, thus turning your brain off from home to work, the familiar sights and sounds, the routines and habits. You know, did you go out? Did you park in a particular space? Did you go out to lunch on Tuesdays with your friend? You know, your meeting on Wednesday morning, you know, all of that stuff. And then now you have to regain that in the environment that is solely your place of relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have to reestablish that. And it feels foreign.
Yeah. Because you know what? Because I was working from home, you know, since March, like the last 2 weeks in March.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they told us to you know, we can work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Girl.
I'm telling you.
You know, I was telling, you know, my group of friends, I'm like, so we had like a virtual girls night, and I said, I wasn't feeling it at first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they was messing with me, telling me I'm not doing it right, but
that's real. Like, you got to make this work.
Right. But and like you said, though, you know, it's home is like your relaxation spot. It's your chill spot. It's your castle. You know, it's where you come to get away from stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and yeah.
It can feel like an invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a solid work schedule, you know that it can be fluid throughout the day. You just have to produce a particular thing, but the time frame it isn't as rigid.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to discipline yourself, or otherwise everything gets worked in together.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you're never off.
Mm-hmm.
And those work people, you feel like they at your house, and so
right.
It can get a little frustrating as people are navigating that new norm. And then you put on top of that, if you had some kids at the house that you had to educate and make sure they were doing what they needed to do, then it's just kind of one big jambalaya of responsibility versus these segments that you previously had that helped you maintain a sense of normalcy and stability.
That's true. And then, like you said, like being quarantined, you know, and then us dealing with COVID, you know, how they're saying how it affects us even more. So it's like that's something else.
There's something else.
And and then with everything that's going on with us, it's very stressful. It can be very stressful. And I was going to ask, because we know that trauma, with people that's involved with, the different, the killings, the murderings of us by the hands of, you know, some police and civilians. We know that trauma, you know, affects that person's family, or say if, you know, if they were blessed enough and not, you know, they didn't were killed, but they like survived it, you know, apprehended, they suffered that personal trauma. So I was going to ask you, is there a such thing like as a trauma being indirect.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. Trauma can be secondary.
Mm.
There's community traumas. Uh, Absolutely. You don't have to be the victim, the direct victim of a trauma to be traumatized. It can be someone that you know. It could be someone, one of the risk factors in terms of suicide is if they knew someone who committed suicide. Association is not just blood. It's not just blood relative. We're humans and we're designed to be connected, and we connect with people in different ways. And so, a trauma to someone, let's reflect back to late January and February when the tragedy that happened with Kobe Bryant and all those people that died on the helicopter. Now, to my knowledge, nobody that I know knew Kobe.
Right.
But the world grieved because they were connected to him through the sport he played at such a phenomenal level. But people connected with him as an athlete and what he began to represent after his career. People connected with him as a father. And that death was traumatic.
It was.
One of the benefits, I think, that came out of that was that people grieved publicly. And it gave everyone else an informal permission to grieve. You saw men, 6'9", men in just think about it, the tears. But it was a healing for them, but it also gave everyone else who would maybe try to sweep it up under, not really let loose of the depth of what they were feeling. It gave them permission to let it all out. So it was almost like a worldwide therapy session. Everybody don't need to go to therapy, for 2 years. Everybody need that.
Right.
So short-term therapy, brief interventions, they're there for a reason. Sometimes you really just need to let it out and know that you're not normal because you need to. Yeah. So, to answer your question more directly, yes, there absolutely is secondary trauma and community trauma. All of these things that have happened in the African American community. They are compounded traumas is really what they are. Because when this happened with George Floyd, what it brings back to mind is what happened with Trayvon Martin, Ahmaud. Emmett Till, and the just brutality, unchecked brutality. It brings all of that back to the surface. And while you hold the fact that it was just wrong, that little boy was snatched out of his home and tortured by grown men. And I'm talking about Emmett Till.
Yeah.
And while you hold that and you hold the memory of his mother grieving her only child, while you hold that, you still trying to live.
Yeah.
So when you see someone, I still haven't watched the full video of George Floyd.
Oh, girl, I can't.
I cannot. I've only seen snippets in part because I know the weight of it. Now I know the end result, and that by itself is immensely painful.
I was watching CNN. Like I haven't seen the whole video, but they did. I was watching Don Lemon, his special, and they did play some stuff I didn't see. I'm like, and it just the tears just started to fall, because we see this happening to us like all the time, and not just the men, the women. So it's like we have to be concerned about our fathers, our husbands, boyfriends, nephews and brothers, and shoot, ourselves, at some point, it's like, how do you live? And, in your words, how do you live and without it? Because, we get angry. You get angry. You don't want to, just being real. It's like, I don't want to be kind to someone that's non-Black right now.
I mean, that's one of the kind of cues that you have to kind of take a step back for a moment, and you have to kind of put some boundaries around yourself about how much you intake of the information around the traumatic experiences. You're not being ignorant of them. You're not ignoring that they exist. You're also not required to ingest it all at one time. When you are not the direct victim of it, you can engage in such a way that is proactive, but is also sustaining for your own emotional health. It helps to have conversations with people. And that can be, it's informal. Having some conversations with your families, with your friends, with your loved ones, and really debrief. It's really what it is. It's a debriefing of seeing this is what I saw. This is what it makes me feel. I'm feeling frustrated. And, a lot of times we go to our major emotions. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm happy. We go to our major emotions, but sometimes we're feeling powerless. Sometimes we're feeling, like we're hopeless, and we don't always know how to articulate it or identify it. There's this breadth of emotions that could be bubbling under the surface, and it helps us to be able to identify what those are. The difference is if you're to a place where it's starting to hinder your ability to function. Yes, you can take some time off.
Right.
That's what your PTO is for.
Right.
So, if you have that time, you can take some time off, because and take some time off from work, where you're called to put out and respond to other people's needs, or produce a particular end and attend to yourself. And you don't have to do anything major. I mean, sometimes it's just, I don't have to talk to anybody.
Right.
What it is.
So what about those people who can't take time off?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked me. The other part of that is sometimes we can't take time off of work. But we can take time off of the list of to-dos. Some of it is our own, some of it is self-inflicted to-dos. Some of it is other people's to-dos. But we can take some time off from the list of to-dos and reassign some portion of time to health-sustaining activities, or just experiences. And yeah, we're still in restrictions, so we can't do everything.
Right.
We can't, hang out, down at the river well, you're not supposed to.
Well,
with everybody all
down there,
there's not, the free concerts aren't going, so everything is not available yet.
Yeah.
But there are things that help to further our health. And some of it's just basic stuff. Sleep hygiene is important, and that's just good sleeping habits. It can be difficult, because we want to finish that Netflix thing we were watching.
One more episode.
Just one more. Wait a minute, I'm almost done with season 2. I'm almost, but just shutting everything off and allowing your brain time to unplug.
Mm.
and stop firing on all cylinders. I personally have a puzzle that I've been working on for, I think I'm about a month past, month into it. It's a 1,000 piece puzzle. It's just sitting on the table. And so when I just need to not think,
Mm.
I just go put a couple pieces, figure out a couple pieces where they go in. It gives me a sense of accomplishment, but without a major commitment.
Oh, that's good.
When you're feeling like I can't control anything, it helps to have something you feel like you can.
Okay.
Um, which is another, when I think about all of really it's just sadistic attacks
Mm-hmm.
on human beings in African skin.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it's just really sadistic. But it can promote a feeling of powerlessness. Like, well,
Yeah.
what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
But even in that, you have to really take a true assessment of where you are and the potentials of what could happen versus, well, what's really going on in my life right now. Am I in danger in this moment? No, I am not. Are my loved ones informed? One of the questions I have young, nieces and nephews, and they were online, online schooling, and I just thought, like, well, wait a minute, are they safe online? Do they know, how not to be the victim,
Mm.
of someone, and so it just ran across my mind. So I reached out to my siblings and just, hey, have you guys had this conversation with them? Do they
Right.
know? And all of that to appease and ease my sudden worry.
Right.
And so once, they were like, yeah, we talked to them. We fine. We got it.
All right.
They're on top of it. Then the threat of risk was then reduced because I felt like it had been addressed.
Okay.
And so sometimes you just kind of have to take that reality. Are you in danger at this moment? No, I'm not. Is the risk of harm present? No, not for me, not in this moment. So let me bring my blood pressure down.
Mm-hmm.
Let me bring the anxieties down. Let me give my body a chance to reset. Because in essence, what I'm doing is I'm working myself up about a risk that isn't present, putting my body in a flight mode when it doesn't need to be.
Okay.
If it needs to be, then it needs to be. But
Mm-hmm.
in this moment, I don't need it to be. I don't need my adrenaline rushing, which is going to add to me gaining weight in the first place. Nobody want that.
Girl.
That cortisol get to moving.
15.
Man, quarantine pounds are real.
Yes.
They are real.
Yes.
So, but that's another one of the things that helps to maintain that's just kind of day-to-day habits. So sleep hygiene is one of them.
Okay.
Getting good sleep, um, getting enough sleep.
Mm.
Enough sleep, not too much, but enough
Is it
enough
15
sleep.
is too much?
Yeah. And eating well.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you never have anything deemed a cheat or bad,
Mm-hmm.
but giving your body good fuel to live off of. One, even if we are a healthy weight and we eat bad over and over again, we start to feel a little guilty about it,
Yeah.
which doesn't help us.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't help us. So,
Mm-hmm.
eating healthy, making sure you stay hydrated. And one of the signs that we're might be starting to feel a little down, uh, and it could be masked during this COVID stay at home stuff, but you got to check it, is if we're not attending to our personal hygiene and routines in the same way. So if you're staying in pajamas all day and you just don't have any energy at all, like I'm not, you wake up in pajamas, you go to bed in the same pajamas,
Mm-hmm.
might brush your teeth, if somebody else is around and you don't want to offend, if you're there,
Right.
then you got to make some adjustments.
Mm.
Doesn't mean you put on clothes,
Right.
but are you attending to your personal hygiene and practices? Yeah, you might go from pajamas to leggings and a t-shirt, but,
Mhm.
did you engage in things that help you to feel good?
Mhm.
So those are the things that that keep us in a sense of normalcy, keep us attending to the purest form of who we are, which is our health and well-being.
At
We can't neglect those.
Right, it's true. At what point would you should suggest that someone like, okay, yeah, you need this to speak to someone like ASAP?
Yeah. So generally, you'll notice if you go to the doctor's office, you'll notice the doctor will ask you like two questions. In the last 2 weeks, have you had lack of interest or desire to participate in things that you normally enjoy? Is one of the questions. And depending on how you answer those questions, they'll start to ask you a couple of more questions
Mm-hmm.
around the same lines. Within the last 2 weeks, have you had all of these things? Change in appetite, change in sleeping habits. 2 weeks is the marker. 2 weeks of that disruption is the marker of this is turning into a disruption to your ability to function. So that's the marker that I would give. If it's been 2 weeks of this downward presentation of interest and engagement and abilities, then reach out to someone. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you call a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
You might call your primary doctor if you have a primary doctor. Some companies have EAP,
Mm-hmm.
so those are available and they're generally free.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might reach out to your clergy, your pastor, um, to get a sense of support. But at that point, you want to start reaching out to someone. And if you're noticing that with someone, ask them.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed, AB. You don't want to hit them with C, D, E, F, and G. You don't
Right.
want to hit them with this list. But
Right.
I've noticed, it's been a little difficult for you to kind of do the things you typically do. What's going on? And, most of
Mm-hmm.
the time, you might be able to get a conversation going with them around how they're doing. Again, like I said, some of that can be masked a little bit with these stay-at-home orders because our routines are so disrupted. Um, but it's never wrong to ask. It's never wrong to ask.
That's some good stuff.
Yeah.
That's some good stuff. Like I was letting you know before we started, I was like
Mm-hmm.
this article I had brought up, and it did talk about collective. I think you mentioned it too. Collective traumas,
Mm-hmm.
and one fact that it said that we, as African Americans, um, suffer from that more than diabetes.
I believe it.
Yeah, I believe that too.
I believe it.
So, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
How do I frame this? So, what do you, like, in your professional opinion, like, what do you suggest that we do, as African Americans, like, just going out in our daily lives, especially people who live in cities or states that's more prone to these type of acts that's done towards us, like we mentioned Ahmaud,
Mm-hmm.
how he was just, just hunted down by just, regular folk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I know I know that a lot of the stressors that can be associated with that, like us just driving, like you say, you can feel powerless in this type of climate right now. but it's something that we still have to keep trucking and keep doing. I know that anxiety can get to some people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one article I read, it was a Black scientist. He was like, "Look, I don't feel like being kind to no one right now." He's like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that you mentioned a lot of good things that we can do, and what we can do at home.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I just want to stress to people who, I don't know, because you know in your profession, and I know I work in I work for Easter Seal, so
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
Very familiar.
yeah,
Yeah.
so with the teenagers in the
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrist's office, and I see a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and and you say you work with teenagers,
Oh yeah.
but it's like the kids up until like 18,
Mm-hmm.
but so for like the next generation, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they out here doing their thing, though. I commend them.
Mm-hmm.
They're out here doing their thing. They're out here protesting and letting their voices be heard. But I don't know, it can be kind of scary for them, and parents of teenagers. So someone who might be listening to this or watching this, people are always in a constant state of fear. People are always in a constant state of anger. 'Cause I know for me, I have to pull it back some, because I
Mm-hmm.
remember it was like years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was driving in a car, and my boyfriend was next to me, and I got stopped in Huntington Woods,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of hot. I was like, why I pulled you off. So I said, yeah, I know why. I'm just,
Yeah, I know why. But what you getting ready to say?
I was insinuating that it was because I was Black,
Mm-hmm.
and even though I didn't say it, but he knew that's what I was thinking. But
Mm-hmm.
he just like, no, that's not, it. And he let me go with a warning.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of times, a lot of us who, we get stopped, people don't, they're in fear that they don't know if that's going to be their last time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what do you say? How do you deal with that fear? And like I said, I know, we're Christians, and we know the word and everything. But for those who like don't, or their faith, maybe some, everybody's faith is different and is different stages. I don't know, because I see a lot of people, young, old, middle age, and we're all like just dealing with this, and it's not healthy. It's not.
Yeah. I couple of things, if I may,
Mhm.
is don't allow somebody else to define your reality for you. I don't care who you are or what your situation is. The first seat of power is you.
Mhm.
So with that, I've seen, we're on social media.
Yeah.
And so there are things that are pushed out all the time, based on what we view, algorithms, whatever stuff is pushed out to us all the time. And then it's like a cyclone. They just rushed us.
Mhm.
Some is helpful. Some of it is insidious in its impact. So one of the things that I kept seeing and that I keep seeing is, and it's kind of being shared and reshared, but the verbiage is what catches me,
Mhm.
that I think is changing our perspective of our life.
Mm.
And is, the word is like, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. Your Black friends, they're exhausted. Well, I'm not exhausted. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed.
Mhm.
And I'm also empowered, because where I thought some things were being handled, not necessarily being handled, but where I wasn't fully focused because I was focused on something else, I'm now empowered to engage in some things to make some movement. So my point of that is define where you are for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you afraid? Are you afraid? Are you? Or are you aware of your surroundings and what's happening around you?
That's good.
Can you read what's happening? Because what's going to help in any situation is that you know how to respond and that you're not just reacting off of everything people say and do. Because
Mm-hmm.
the reactions are not thought out,
Mm-hmm.
they're about getting out.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are times where you need to react, and your body's built to be able to react, but that's not everything. So read your situation. Where are you? And then define for yourself where you are. What capabilities do you have to move the needle even further from where we walked into this scenario? Generations before us brought us to where we are.
Mm-hmm.
We are required to do our part,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that may be. Everybody's is going to be a little bit different. Some people are straight; they on these streets turning it out,
Right.
and everybody's joining to have that voice heard. Some of us are in these courtrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are sitting on benches to hear these cases. Some of us are in therapy rooms waiting for y'all to show up. Some of us are raising children and giving them the narrative of the value of who we are, period.
Mm-hmm.
Flat, not what somebody else said, not what history told us, but the value of who we are. So that as they grow and they encounter things that are counter to who they know themselves to be, they can identify it. That's not the truth of me.
Right.
So, some of us are in education, helping to inform the next generation to be able to go out and tackle the issues that we don't get to in our time.
Sure.
So, the empowerment comes in taking your place. Where are you?
Mm-hmm.
So when I get in the car and drive, and yeah, I'm a believer, so I put on my seatbelt because I don't expect my angel to hold me in my seat by myself.
Right.
So I put on my seatbelt. But I declare, the blood of Jesus that I go to and fro. If I get pulled over, because I may or may not be one who likes to speed.
Okay.
If I get pulled over, I know I'm not coming into that as if I'm already gone.
Mm-hmm.
I have a life that I'm living with intention and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, what? Do I like to get stopped? Like I'm looking at the officer. Do I like getting stopped? No. But if he gets an attitude or she gets an attitude, I've already kind of gauged myself on how to respond to such a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Now, evil walks among us. I'm not saying that it doesn't. So I'm not giving this information to say that you or someone will never encounter the evil that some have encountered. And unfortunately, it's just the world we live in.
Yeah.
Women walk the earth with not knowing, if someone would try to assault them.
Right.
We send our children to school, to schools with the knowledge that someone might not revere them.
Right.
So the potential for fear is everywhere. But who wants to live accommodating that all your life?
Right.
Take your power back.
It's good.
Redefine who you are and walk like you mean it.
That's right.
If you find that all of the stuff that you've taken in is heavy, take your time, unload. Don't explode on nobody.
It's not going to help the situation.
It's not, and it's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their fault. You know, God designed our body to react to danger when it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let our minds take us to danger before it's present or if it's not present.
That's good. You have, as we, wow, really? 50 minutes?
Wow. A long time.
Some good stuff.
Easy conversation.
Yes. So for those who might say, you know what, I might need to talk with someone at that point where Deidre was saying that if you're at this point, we know that there's, like if they want to talk to someone professional, most insurances cover that. You might have a copay. I know I have a copay for mine. Like you mentioned, EAP. Like if your job benefits might have that short term counseling that's like for free for like so many sessions.
Yeah.
You can do that. Medicaid, if you're on Medicaid, you can do that. So are there other like resources somebody can get, like say from like the internet or?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. So Nami, Nami, is an organization that is all about mental health.
Okay.
So they're one. There are apps aplenty for relaxation, meditation, and now, since COVID helped this along, telehealth is thriving.
Yeah.
So you can connect with on your phone, a provider on your phone, and have a session just like we talking now. The resources are available. One thing I did want to direct people to is in terms of being able to identify emotions. There is, if you Google emotional wheel and kind of helping to further your insight into what you might be experiencing, it'll kind of break down from the major emotions to what might be feeding it a little bit underneath that. So I would use it all the time in therapy sessions, all the time.
You said this is Google emotional wheel?
The emotional wheel, yeah. Or wheel of emotions is another way to come up. But I find it really helpful because honestly, there's one emotion that makes you feel empowered that covers like everything. Everything is I'm mad.
Yeah.
I'm mad.
Right.
Because one, it feels powerful. There's no stigma around it. Men can express it, women can express it, and people understand it. Like, I see why you're mad about that. But if you go into somewhere and be like, I just feel so vulnerable about this. I just feel like I'm, people feel vulnerable. Yeah. But it would help you to identify it and then start to resolve some of the underlying questions and needs that might be presenting themselves. And also can lead you to some suitable answers to those questions. If you're feeling powerless, what can help you feel powerful? What can you do to contribute to the movement? And speaking about things that are going on in terms of race relations in the country, are you aware of the groups that are active, boots on the ground, talking to leadership to get policies changed? Do you know who those organizations are? Can you support them? Is there something that you can do to contribute to the work to further the cause? To feel like you're adding some powerful movement. And that's early when I said, I'm feeling a little encouraged and empowered around some things because now I know where the work is being done. Because that was, for me, that was a lingering question, was who's doing it?
Okay.
And so, not just what shows up on my timeline, not just what shows up in news articles, but where's the rubber meeting the road? Where is that? And so that added an opportunity to be intentional about acting in such a way that is furthering movement. And so that wheel of wheel of emotions, or feelings wheel, can help you identify what you might be feeling. That then opens the door for you to be open to these answers that may present themselves, because now you know, oh, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a little bit of the air out of the balloon, takes a little bit of the pressure out, to be able to go and live and thrive. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. This was very helpful, and I know it's going to help a lot of people. So before I, even excuse me, wrap up, is there any last words you want to say, or you're good?
Well, I just kind of reiterate what I've shared. The knowing that your life is valuable, the whole life you live, the fullness of who you are is valuable. And it's important to attend to all the places that help to sustain that valuable life, your physical health and your emotional health, and of course your spiritual health.
Yes.
Yeah. So making sure that your mind, Christian speaking, we know suke is
Right.
your mind, will, and your emotions. Yes. But that word is where we get the word psyche from. Mm-hmm. Psyche, psychological. Mm-hmm. So your mind, your will, and your emotions are a part of who you are, and they need attending to, and it happens every day. Are your relationships healthy? Mm-hmm. Are the activities that you engage in on a regular basis, are they aiding your health with your mind, your will, and your emotions? Are your eating habits? Because what we eat and drink does impact our emotions. Yeah. And then making sure that we're physically active as well. Nobody has to be a triathlete. But
a little walk would do you.
Yes, it will. I'm trying to tell you. Mm-hmm. Getting outside into some sunshine, it helps. It does help to reduce stress. Yeah, it does. And so just making sure we attend to those basic things so that part of your life is as healthy as it can be. And if you need some help, go get it.
That's right. You heard it, everybody. If you need help, go get it. Don't be afraid, and just take care of yourself, like Deidre was graciously said to us. And again, thank you so much for being on the show, and I really appreciate it. And I know that others will appreciate it as well. So, everyone, we just want to thank you for tuning in, for listening, or watching. And we will be back again next week with another topic. And take care of yourselves. We're all in this together, okay?
Yes, we are.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Picking it with Kay and Clay. Picking it with Kay and Clay. Picking it with Kay and Clay.